The title of my sermon is How to Become a Faith Hero. Judges 11 verse 1 starts by introducing a man called Jephthah. Now Jephthah, the Gileadite, was a mighty man of valor. When you read Hebrews 11, you will find that the author gives a list of people he thought to be faith heroes. Amongst those people he mentioned were Abel, Enoch, and Noah, to name but a few. He then goes on describing these faith heroes and then ends with naming some additional people. Let me read Hebrews 11:32 for you. What more shall I say? For the time would fail me if I told of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and the prophets. Jephthah is one of these men mentioned here, one of the faith heroes of Hebrews 11. It is my experience that not many people know who Jephthah is and why he would be included in this list of faith heroes. Who was this man? What did he do to deserve being included in this great list of faith heroes? This morning I want to take you on a journey, which is this man called Jephthah. And by using his life as an example, I want to show you how to become a faith hero. To understand who this man was, we need to take a trip through history. When Moses died, Joshua took over the reins from him. He led the people with great success. However, when he died, everything went pear-shaped. Israel started to sin, and they adopted the religions of the Gentiles. The idea was for them to remove the people from the areas they were occupying. But when this seemed too difficult, they opted to live with them. Because of this and because of their sin, God gave them over to the other nations, and they were slaves to these people, being oppressed by them. However, Israel time after time would cry out to God to save them, and God would give them a judge to lead them out of slavery or oppression. Things went well until the judge would die. Then the people would go back to their old ways of sinning, and God would lift his hand of protection and allow them to be conquered by the Gentile nations. This was a wicked cycle that went on and on. This was also what happened during Jephthah's lifetime. Let us read about this in Judges 10 verse 6 to 7. The children of Israel again did that which was evil in Yahweh's sight, and served the Baals, the Ashtaroth, the gods of Syria, the gods of Sidon, the gods of Moab, the gods of the children of Ammon, and the gods of the Philistines. They abandoned Yahweh and didn't serve him. Yahweh's anger burned against Israel, and he sold them into the hand of the Philistines and into the hand of the children of Ammon. Israel was under the reign of the Philistines and the Ammonites for 18 years. And again the people cried out to God to give them a judge who would lead them to salvation. This brings us to the man God chose to be the 8th judge of Israel, the one who would lead them to salvation, the man they looked for when they asked, who is this man who will begin to fight against the children of Ammon? He shall be head over all the inhabitants of Gilead. This man was known as Jephthah. And Jephthah wasn't born in a noble, perfect, no-problem family. His father's name was Gilead, but nothing more is known about his mother other than the fact that she was a prostitute. Jephthah would often find it difficult to answer the other kids when they asked him who his mother was, and he would be ridiculed because of it. This was not an ideal situation to be born into nor grown up in. Here was this young boy, the son of a prostitute. Children can be very cruel, and when it came to Jephthah, it was no different. He was mocked and teased from an early age, but this just made him stronger. He didn't allow his past to influence his future. Now Jephthah's father did have a wife, and she bore him more sons. However, the boys did not get on well with Jephthah because they did not share the same mother as he did. Growing up was hard, and time and again he had to hear that he was an outsider and not part of the family. At family gatherings, he was treated as an outsider or invader. He never had the option of having his brothers be his brothers. It reminds me of the story of Joseph, who also had issues with his brothers, though for a reason of jealousy. When Jephthah's father died, the boys were all grown up. Then, when it was time for their father's inheritance to be divided, Jephthah's brothers chased him out and said, "You will not inherit in our father's house, for you are the son of another woman." Jephthah's heart was broken. Here he was, chased away from the only home he has ever known, from the only family he ever loved, by men who were his brothers. He could take not being part of the family, but still living with him, but they chased him away like a stray cat. This was something he did not see coming, but he always knew he was destined for more. What it was, he had no clue. Jephthah had no choice but to go away, and with that, he went to live in a place called Tob. Here he found himself in a foreign place, where he knew no one, without any money or source of income, abandoned by his family. He was all alone and scared of what the future held for him. But God never forgot him. You see, God had a plan for this young man, but it wasn't his time yet. God needed Jephthah to learn a couple of things before he could use him. Jephthah needed to become a warrior first, a leader, because this is what God needed. He wasn't that yet. He was still a scared young man in a foreign land without friends and family. We read that in this new land, worthless men were gathered to Jephthah and went out with him. Now, an initial reading would make it seem that he was joining and leading men that were not of good character, criminal men. However, as Clark and Earl noted, these were not criminals but poor men, men without property and employment, men like Jephthah. They would lead raids against the Ammonites and would protect the people at a price and by plundering the enemy's possessions. This is how they made their living. This is also where Jephthah learned to be a warrior and a leader. Jephthah was not alone in this, as he echoed men like Esau and Abimelech before him and King David after him, who did the same thing. They were seen as heroes, people who fought for justice, and they were revered and supported. Jephthah had people with him who were like-minded, men who trusted God and supported Jephthah in becoming the man that God wanted him to become. God was getting Jephthah ready for big things, but to get there, he first needed to get through the initial training phase. Eventually, the author of Judges described him as follows: Jephthah the Gileadite was a mighty man of valor. He was a man of valor. In other words, a brave warrior. When the Ammonites made war against Israel, the elders from Gilead went to Jephthah and they asked him to lead them to victory against their enemies. They have heard that what he did and can do. He was a man with a reputation, one who you could rely on and trust, but also one with the ability to fight and conquer the enemy. The elders did not send a messenger to ask Jephthah to come, but went themselves, showing the urgency and importance of this request. Jephthah was a bit hesitant, and he asked them, "Didn't you hate me and drive me out of my father's house? Why have you come to me now when you are in distress?" Jephthah had the right to ask them this. After all, when he was in need, no one came to his aid. They joined his brothers in throwing him out of his house and leaving him to fend for himself in a foreign place without any means of income. Now that he has made a name for himself as a great warrior and they need his assistance, now they came to him begging him to help them. At hearing the request, Jephthah said to them that if he was victorious, he wanted to be their leader. They affirmed that it would be so. Jephthah was a man that knew God, as is evident in these verses found in Judges 11 verse 10 to 11. The elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, "Yahweh will be witness between us. Surely we will do what you say." Jephthah went with them, and the people made him their leader, and commander. So Jephthah went to Mizpah and repeated all these things in the presence of the Lord. He made sure that what was decided on would be made in front of God and repeated in front of God. Here's the thing. Jephthah not only forgave these people, but he also chose to help them. He did it because he trusted God and knew that God was on his side. He knew that God had instigated the training that he went through, for God had a plan in time for him, and this was the time. However, before he decided to take on the Amorites, he first sent their king a message to ask him the reason he attacked Israel. He wanted to take the diplomatic road. The king answered and said to him, "When the people of Israel left Egypt, they took my land." In other words, he accused the Israelites of stealing his land. Jephthah proceeded to give the king a history lesson, telling him that Israel came in peace, but it was the inhabitants that were hostile towards the Israelites. Despite this, God gave them this land and they took it. The Ammonite king did not listen to what Jephthah said. He wanted war and believed that he could win. Then the Lord's Spirit came over Jephthah, and he gathered his army for the fight. Jephthah gave the Ammonite king a chance to get out of this fight. He gave him a chance to keep a war from breaking out, but this king was arrogant. He did not listen to Jephthah, and he was determined to wage war. He thought that he could win. Jephthah was ready. He knew God was on his side. He had experience as a warrior and as a leader. He was ready for the fight. But before going to war, Jephthah did something unnecessary. He did something that God did not ask him, nor would have asked from him. He made a vow to God. See, Jephthah wanted to make sure God was in this and that he had utilized everything that he had to his disposal to ensure God helped him. He knew, therefore, that if God did not help them, they would not win. This is the vow he made to God. Jephthah vowed a vow to Yahweh and said, "If you will indeed deliver the children of Ammon into my hand, then it shall be that whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me, when I return in peace from the children of Ammon, it shall be Yahweh's, and I will offer it up for a burnt offering." Now this is probably one of the most debated verses in the Bible. When you read it the first time, it does seem to suggest that if God helps Jephthah to be victorious, then he will sacrifice the first thing that comes out of his house. However, further reading suggests something else. It just suggests that Jephthah said that he will either consecrate it to the Lord or he will offer it as a burnt offering, whichever one is applicable. Therefore, if it's a human, that human would be consecrated or set apart for the Lord. But if it is an animal, it would be given as a burnt offering to God. However, Beacon Bible Commentary disagrees and says that we should understand it as the first thing, be it human or animal, that comes out of his house would be sacrificed to the Lord. The conclusion is that the pagan religions of Canaan had influenced Hebrew monotheism at this time. And Valley adds that sacrificing human was quite common amongst the pagan religion, but it was not applied in Israel, although this could have been an exception to the rule. So Jephthah went to war, and God was with him, and they were victorious. There was great joy amongst the people, and they marched to his house. It was there that he understood the consequences of the vow he made with God. It was his daughter who first ran out of the house to greet him. When he saw her, he immediately remembered his vow. Did he not expect his daughter to be the first to come out of his house? When he saw her, he knew that he had to consecrate her to God. He knew that he had made a mistake in making an unnecessary vow to God. It would change his and her life forever. In seeing her, he tore his clothes, looked at his daughter with a tear running down his cheek, fell to his knees and said, "Oh no, daughter, you've brought me to my knees. What disaster you've brought me. I made a foolish promise to the Lord. Now I can't break it." His heart was broken. This man who went through tough times, when thrown out of his own house, chased away by his family, living in a place where he knew no one, without income, overcoming all of this to become a war hero and leader, was now facing a tough decision. Was he going to adhere to the vow he made, or was he going to ignore this? He was a man of his word, and he knew there was just one decision. When he told his daughter what he had done, she was shocked at first. Her father had made a vow with God, and she was to live out that vow. But here's the thing. She grew up in a house where her father was an example to her and what it meant to worship God, and she also knew that God is in control of all things. If God wanted her to be sanctified for His work, then she would adhere. She would do whatever was expected of her. This was her reply. She said to him, "Father, you made a promise to the Lord. Do to me whatever you promise, since the Lord has punished your enemy Ammon." She did ask for 2 months' grace to enjoy with her friends. It is then here where we again find the meaning of the vow Jephthah made with God when she said that she wanted to mourn not being able to get married or to stay a virgin. And so Jephthah consecrated his daughter for God. He had had many other victories, and after his death he was buried in Gilead, the same place from which he was abolished. Jephthah had so much faith in God that he trusted God with his daughter. Could have broken the vow and lived with the consequences, but Jephthah had become a faith hero. I want us to look at Jephthah's life and see what it takes to become a faith hero. Number 1, be the change in your family. It is so easy just to follow the status quo. I'm like this because this is just how our family is. My father was like this, his father was like that, and his father was like that. On and on. There needs to come a time in your life that you break with all of that, where you say, I am my person. I will not be defined by the actions of my forefathers. I will be defined by my new identity as a child of God. Research has shown that when a child becomes the first person in the family to become a Christian, the chances that the rest of the family will become Christians are about 3.5%. When a mother is the first in the family to become a Christian, the statistics go up to 17%. But when a father comes to salvation, the chances that the rest of the household become Christians are 93%. Good things happen at home when a father stands up and follows Jesus. But that does not mean that you are not a father. That does not mean that if you are not a father, this does not apply to you. If you find yourself in such a family or situation, I want to urge you to stand up and become that person. Be the change. That's what Jephthah did. Despite coming from a broken home, despite being born from a prostitute, despite being chased away from his family, he stood up and made sure he followed God, and he became a man of faith. This filtered down to him becoming a great man of faith. He was the change. If you find yourself in a broken family where God is not number 1, be the change. Number 2, stop blaming others for your conduct. In this day and age, it has become popular to blame others when things don't go your way or when we do something wrong. A man who drinks excessively blames his alcoholic father. When a girl sleeps around, she blames her mother for having affairs. It is time that people stand up and take responsibilities for their actions, affirming that they did what they did because they are a sinner and not because of someone else's conduct. It was Booker T. Washington who said success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in his life as by the obstacles which he has overcome while trying to succeed. When you take responsibility for your actions, it is then that you become a faith hero. It shows bravery and accountability. Number 3, get rid of any grudges. Most people would have excused Jephthah if he kept on holding grudges against his brothers and the rest of his town. However, he let go of these. He forgave them. If he did not, he would never have become the man of faith. We would not have known who he was, but he decided to forgive and forget. This is what Jesus also echoed during his Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5. If you want to become a faith hero, then you need to ensure that you make things right with those you have something against or who have something against you. Holding grudges will keep you from becoming a faith hero because it will infiltrate every part of your being like cancer, killing any chance of you ever becoming a faith hero. Number 4, surround yourself with like-minded people. People may label you and call you what they think they see. That's okay, because God sees us for who we are. Do not let people's opinion or statements of you influence or define who you are. The only opinion that matters is God's. Jephthah was labeled as someone who led a bunch of criminals. However, he was a believer and he knew what he was doing. He led these men on raids and God helped them. God was teaching him what he needed to be because he was going to use him. Jephthah was surrounded by like-minded people who had the same purpose as he did. Surround yourself with like-minded people as they will lift you and fight with you. You don't need to do it alone. People can help you become a faith hero. Number 5, trust God. Jephthah was thrown out of his house and he had to live in a place where he knew no one, fending for himself to make ends meet. From time to time, I'm sure he thought to himself, why is this happening to me? Why am I going through all of this? What have I done to deserve this? But he trusted God and God had a plan with him. God was going to use him to do things as a faith hero, but he needed to learn some things first before God could use him. David had to learn to trust God when the lion and the bear attacked him. He had to learn how to use his weapon before God used him to fight Goliath. Abraham had to learn to trust God in where he was taking him. God did not tell Abraham where he needed to go just to go. Abraham trusted God and God used him and he became a faith hero. Isn't it time that you also start to trust God? Trust that he knows best, that he is teaching you something. You are in basic training. And number 6, for me this is one of the most important lessons we can take from Jephthah. He was a man of his word. When he made a vow to God, he honored that vow even to the expense of his daughter. God was the most important person in his life, above his wife, above his daughter, above his own life. He made an unnecessary vow, he made a mistake, but he still valued his relationship with God so much that he adhered to the conditions of the vow. With this, Jephthah became a faith hero, a man worthy to be named amongst people like Abel, Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Rahab, Gideon, Barak, David, and Samuel. God's will for all of us is to become faith heroes. It's not just set out for certain people, but you need to do what it takes to become a faith hero. Like Jephthah, you need to be a change in your family. You need to take responsibility for your actions and stop blaming others. You need to get rid of any grudges you hold and need to deal with those who have something against you. You need to surround yourself with like-minded people. Join a church if you're not part of one yet. Join a cell group. You need to trust that God knows what He is doing. And you need to be a man and woman of your word. These are just 6 points that I learned from Jephthah on how to become a faith hero. I hope this inspired you to also take these things to heart and start practicing them. Thank you.